Welcome to this episode of the Skillsminer podcast, where we talk to Dawn Newman, who heads up the CACHE alumni community over at NCFE. Dawn tells us how the community came about and how she has developed her own skills and knowledge in her career, and how those transferable skills have helped her define her role today. Enjoy listening. Hi, and welcome to another Skillsminer podcast. And today, Kirsty and I are delighted to be joined by Dawn Newman from CACHE Alumni. So hi, welcome Dawn. How are you today?
Hello, it's really nice to be here. I'm good, thanks. It's nice that we've got some nice weather, which is unusual for September.
Shine, but autumn's definitely on the way, isn't it?
Yes,
Very much, yeah.
absolutely. My goodness, Dawn, you and I go back a little way now, so we do. Lots of adventures,
weird, isn't it?
CACHE Alumni and NCFE. Do you want to tell us a little bit about what you do? That'd be a fantastic starting point.
Yeah, I'm really lucky in that I've almost made my job up. So I get to do a little bit of everything. I work as communities manager for a thing called CACHE Alumni, which is a membership community for people who work in care, health, early years, and education. And when you think about that, it sounds like quite a few different sets of people together, but they're united under sort of the CACHE sector, which is a group of qualifications that are offered by NCFE. And there's an awful lot of crossover in the types of work that are done by the different parts of our audience. So a lot of the support that we offer to that group of people is the same, whether they're working with 0 to 5-year-olds or whether they're working with older people in a care setting or in a hospital with a giant age range of people or any of those different parts. Education professionals, they're all, there's a very, very much a shared skill set and a shared value set, so it made sense for us to support that group of people all together. And my job is a little bit of everything that goes into looking after that group of people and maintaining that community. So I get to do a bit of IT and looking after systems, and I get to do a bit of sort of membership stuff and looking at strategy and figuring out marketing stuff and member recruitment and boring stuff like reports and data relation and those sorts of things. But then I also get to do some really cool journalistic stuff with content and going a bit backwards in my career and doing a little bit of careers advice for members and looking at employability support.
So that's really interesting. So CACHE is part of NCFE?
Yes. CACHE is a group of qualifications that exist who it evolved from something called the NNEB. So
okay, I remember NNEB.
1940s. There was no.
Yeah, I'm not from the 1940s that I remember the NNEB.
Definitely not.
But I do remember NNEB.
Yes, the NNEB ran for a very, very long time, and the NNEB came out of the fact that there were no childcare qualifications. It was a relatively new thing in the 1940s for people to officially look after other people's children, because before then it was an informal arrangement and you would drop friends off at your friends' houses, all those sorts of things. So as childcare and early years education became more established as a profession, because groups of women were going to work and therefore group childcare became a thing, the National Nursery Examination Board grew out of that need, and that organisation grew to offer qualifications in more than just early years. And I say just, even though that's probably the biggest area of expression there is, because you're literally everything to those little people, into other care-related and education-related qualifications, and they became CACHE, which at the time stood for the Council of a Warden for Care, Health and Education. In 2015, NCFE acquired CACHE as a brand. NCFE are an educational charity who also have an awarding arm, do qualifications as well as loads of other nice things with education technology and innovations within education and stuff to make assessment better and all of that cool stuff. And now CACHE sits within that bigger picture of that educational charity, and as well as all of those qualifications still being the specialism of NCFE within that CACHE team, there's also a real sense of community amongst people who hold CACHE qualifications. So we do see employers will advertise for someone with a CACHE level 3. And they don't necessarily mean somebody who has an NCFE CACHE level 3 qualification. It could be a Pearson's qualification or a C.
So it's an interchangeable sort of terminology for that community then.
Yeah, it's just become sort of a community in and of itself, and just that shorthand for people who work within the CACHE sector, as well as obviously it being a vibrant part of that bigger picture within qualifications and awarding. So it's really nice to be able to bring all of those community members together a little bit more officially by there being an organisation to give them support with the stuff that they all share as struggles. The general things that we find about our audience, and again these are sweeping generalisations, are that they're not very good at talking about themselves. They could give you 20 reasons that little Jimmy, who picks his nose sitting in the corner, is the most amazing small person that they've ever met. But if you ask them to tell you what they're good at, they'll sort of look at you with fear and go, "Oh, nothing. I just work with kids." And you go, "Well, that's not true. Like you're amazing. Like tell us all the reasons that you enjoy your job," and then they can tell you all the reasons that they're good at it, because they tend to do very similar things. Things like, people who work in our sectors tend to be relatively selfless, so they'll be at the bottom of their own list for looking after themselves, or if you frame CPD in the wrong way, they might feel like it's selfish to take time out to develop themselves, rather than sort of thinking about that as a way that they can just be better at what they do to support the people they work with better. And they all care an awful lot about what they do. So really nice to be able to bring them together to do some sharing and some chatting and figuring things out together. And they're really good at telling each other what they're good at. So that's nice.
So that's a different conversation, isn't it? When you're talking, and I bet they're good at telling each other, like, what would you identify in me that I'm good at? What would I identify in you that you're good at? That's a totally different conversation than identifying it yourself, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think sometimes it's just it's a hard thing to talk about, even if you have a bit of an idea as to what you're good at, isn't it? Like, because it's not really our culture in the UK to say you're good at things. Like, it's much better to talk about the things that you're not very good at, or to sort of tear yourself down, because
we live in that place, do we, a bit where we've got a bit of a deficiency lens on what we don't do. And maybe it's that agenda thing, do you think, as well, Dawn? Do you think that's because there's a lot of people in that sector that are female?
Possibly. I think we've still got a way to go also in sort of recognising those sectors as being quite as brilliant as they are. I think a lot of people still have this idea that you choose to go into that because you can't do something else, rather than just because the people who work in that sector are genuinely really passionate about looking after people.
And none of us can manage without the people looking after people.
Yeah, and I think, again, like, it's just, I don't know whether the culture, again, within that idea of, like, if your whole being is about other people and about looking after other people, it becomes difficult to say, well, I'm great at this and I'm going to do this thing, and to sort of, I suppose, to centre yourself in your development, or in the reasons that you do things, or thinking about what drew you to that thing. You're always going to centre the people that you're serving, or that you're sort of supporting in your thinking. So we've got to reframe things to look at that sort of job satisfaction and, the reasons that people choose to work in the sector, or that the assumption being that people are coming to. You see it all the time when you say, like, GCSE results days, or A-level results days, and they're like, oh, if you don't get the qualifications that you hoped for, you can go and do a vocational qualification. You
Mhm.
want to go and do a vocational qualification? Like, what if actually, like, it totally lights you up to, like, help people to give them something back, to what if that is your vocation? Like, that's what that word means. It's not.
Yeah, it's about having that vocation. Yeah, it's not a second best.
No.
Yeah.
And I think that's just something that you've been really amazing at being able to do within CACHE. It's this sense of community and using that as almost like a key strength, with the people that you're supporting and within the organisations as well, and bringing both of those worlds together. And I every time I look at it, I think, my goodness, there's so much great learning from that for other sectors that are currently undergoing huge transformation. It's something you've been having to continually work at from the get-go, Dawn, and I think this sense of community, but working with the values of that community is super important, and you've really articulated, the big hurdles that they've had to overcome to get to where they've got to go to, and we even look at it from like a career pathway, 40,000 different career pathways through the sector. It's incredible. So much learning, so many amazing different junctures through it, and that together is it's just been no mean feat. I think that's the big thing out of this, and it's that I really would love for other people to see about the sector.
I think I talk about it as one sector and being the CACHE sector, but really, again, I'm talking about the care sector, the early years education, the health sector, and the education sector in terms of sort of everyone, including teaching assistants, teachers, the school staff who were thinking about like children's nutritional needs in kitchens, and like all of that support staff that goes alongside that as well. So really it is 4 sectors, but I will keep talking about it as the CACHE sector and lumping all of those people together, even though there are very distinct specialisms within that. And it's weird because all of the people that are part of CACHE Alumni are all professionals. They're all like really incredible at what they do. They care about it enough that they've gone out and joined a professional organisation to learn more about it in their spare time. Like,
yes,
the stuff that we offer, like the member magazine, the podcast, the articles on the website, the e-learning, the events, all of the stuff that is there for members is all focused on being better at your job. So they're all amazing. They can all tell you exactly why they do all of the things all day. I think there's a weird thing that like people look at the stuff we do it with every job, don't we? We do it with everything. Like people look at my job and go, oh, that must be nice, she just gets to do whatever she wants all day, but actually I'm flitting between 27 different things that I have to do, and prioritizing which one's the most important right now. But it's that the Dunning-Kruger effect, I think it's called, where we look at something that we sort of think we understand and make loads of assumptions about how easy it is, and we just think, oh, I could do that, oh, they must have a lovely life. So, for example, if I pick on early years education, people look at a practitioner sitting using Play-Doh with a group of children and building things out of Play-Doh, and they'll go, well, that must be nice. I wish I could spend my morning playing with Play-Doh. But actually, if you talk to that early years education practitioner, they'll explain that they spend 3 hours planning that session, and that there's a reason they've chosen those specific colours. They're working on looking at colour mixing and figuring out sort of the science behind, if you put a blue with a yellow, then these things happen, and sort of working the basic knowledge of that bit of like maths and science and recognition of colours and all of that sort of stuff. Working on developing the strength of children's hands, dexterous enough to be able to make letters and shapes and be able to hold a pen and write, and they'll explain that the reason they've set the session out the way they have with these very specific 4 different like setups of Play-Doh is so that they can do some imaginary play with this while they go, and that they're working on these things. And that practitioner will tell you like all of the reason behind this, something that looks really simple and easy, and that if you did it at home it might just be a fun thing that you did, like to do with children, but actually they're so good at that, and so like it's such a part of like every consideration they make in every moment within their day-to-day, that they might not even like acknowledge how much it is that they do. Because if you ask them, they'll go, "Oh, I just set the thing up for the," and not articulate that to everyone who asks. And I think that in and of itself, just because they're so good at it that it's become second nature, it's really easy to look at all of this really human interaction stuff and just assume that it comes naturally, that it's just something people do rather than something that they've spent a lot of time and a lot of sort of their professional like energy on really understanding and being able to apply to all of these really disparate like situations as they pop up in
Yeah, exactly. And it's those hours of learning and those hours of developing those skills that come off in the "it looks easy." That's how it looks easy. That's how when we go and watch someone score a goal or score a basket, you know, it's because they practiced. It's because they've practiced that, they've learned and they've understood it. And it's that kind of thing that really matters. And I think the system as well of early years feeding into education, feeding into teachers, you've got the whole range of things there, haven't you, for skills that actually are the supportive functions to help us all get through life, because they're going to help us get through the nursery care, the early years, like you're saying, all those small motor functions that get you into learning, get you comfortable in school, get you working with your teaching assistants who are, you know, critical resources in schools. Then on from there, out of education into being cared for in circumstances, and then at the other end of that in elderly care, you know, or you know, medically required care, different things, different episodes that we have in our lives. The professionalism of those people really matters, actually, and we sort of devalue it a little bit if we're saying, oh, it's a vocational qualification or it's that, but it's super valuable, super valuable.
And it's remembering what that word for me, like vocational, means. Like vocational it's something that you sort of give your life to. It is your vocation, it's your reason for being. And again, like that might be dismissed as, oh, it's just who they are, it's just what they do. But actually it's backed up by this will to like figure it out and to know all of the stuff that then scaffolds that. So every area of the CACHE sector is a really highly skilled area of work. A lot of them come with a requirement whether you've got a license to practice, where you have a specific qualification that allows you to work in that role. Again, like using childcare as the example, to count within ratios, or within the health service it might be to get a certain level of job, you have to pass a certain qualification gateway. But that's all underpinned by that real values-based sort of set of really shared, a shared set of skills in terms of that being able to bring your whole self to work every day, and being able to pull from all of that stuff that you've read in textbooks and done courses about and apply it to situations that are live situations that need an answer now. And anyone who is either a parent or a carer, either professionally or in their own life, will know that it doesn't really matter what's written in the textbook in terms of, if this happens, you do this. Actually, it might be that you pull something from a totally different text, because the skill is being able to know what's right in this very specific situation, rather than necessarily how it's supposed to go in a textbook. So I think the skills is really important.
Yeah, they're like master skills as well, you know, rather than soft skills. I don't like that terminology either, you know. And even if I reflect back to my own years in teaching, you know, it was fascinating how you would approach the same lesson plan or the same activity, and you'd be asked very different questions because of the way in which people learn or they approach that kind of learning. And that you're talking about is like the real magic of what that sector represents to me anyway. And that adaptive thinking, you know, that's hard, you know, it's a difficult thing to learn, you know. Patience too, a lot of patience to work with a person through that process, or a group of little people when you're trying to get them all to kind of come together in that way, or So it's hard. It's very, very hard and understated. What led you to this point, Dawn? You know,
I don't know, if I'm perfectly honest with you. I think, like a lot of careers advisors, I didn't really have a plan for my own career. I've done a bit of just seeing where the breadcrumbs led us, really. So again, like the job I'm doing at the minute has sort of made it up. Just figuring out what was needed at the time that it was needed and plugging that gap and carving that job out of what was there. I think there's more jobs that are like that now, where you sort of start one job, you figure out how things go, and it grows and it shapes itself into something else, and you have to go back and go, I don't think my job description matches what I do anymore, and figure that out. But before that, I've worked as a project manager. I've worked in customer support, both helping sort of in a call centre environment, but also in face-to-face customer service for a long time in a music venue. I've worked in homelessness with adults and in residential childcare. I worked as an administrator in the asylum seekers unit when I first left university. I have an MSc in digital journalism and a BA in drama. And while that might all sound really disconnected from each other, it all threads together.
It does. It's amazing.
Yeah, I did a drama degree and did sort of community theatre projects and worked with the community, including with a group of what to still call school refusers, but these young people weren't refusing.
Yeah, they're not refusing school, are they?
Able to go to school, and in those sorts of community groups, that led me to working in young people's hostel accommodation with homeless teenagers, which then led me into working for the asylum seekers unit, because the council that I worked for was the same one. Worked in a music venue sort of as my part-time job when I was at school, and that grew into more admin work in that same music venue, but at the same time getting involved in their community work, and working with people with learning disabilities and homeless people. Moved into working in adult homelessness from teen homelessness, and then started to work for the National Careers Service and trained as a careers advisor for the National Careers Service, which at the time was still Connections Direct for young people.
That's right.
So a little bit of advice about giving, a little bit of sort of experience giving advice about all sorts of things, and moved into specialising in that young people's careers advice area of the National Careers Service. From there, I got to work more in the employability side of things because I moved welfare to work as an employability advisor for people who had long-term health conditions. And then I came to work for NCFE in their centre support team, supporting schools, colleges and training providers to solve problems. And then NCFE said, we would like to start this thing for people who identify as CACHE people, the people who buy pin badges to say I am CACHE, and we're looking for someone to take that project forward. And they said we're looking for someone who knows stuff about CACHE qualifications, which I'd been supporting all those centres with, and who maybe knows a bit about careers advice and employability to be able to help to develop the stuff that we need for that. And someone who's passionate about bringing together and who project manage projects with the community. And I was like, wow, look, that's just my CV and a job description.
Exactly.
Like, this sounds perfect.
And if they'd been looking for that would have been hard, I guess. You know, if they'd have been specifying someone else who ticked all those different, you know, experiences and lived experience that you've had going through those things and the knowledge and skills that you've developed yourself as you've encountered each of those things, because all of those things are people-based jobs, aren't they? They're not like, oh, well, I pressed a button and then this happened. They're all about engagement, hearts and minds, working with people, building community, understanding what people's needs are, helping them get to a better outcome, aren't they? They're all those real human connection type roles. So it's really interesting that you've ended up in the position you're in there after tying all those things together, Dawn.
Yeah, I didn't ever expect to find a job that sort of ticked all the boxes of like, these are my skills. Like, look, here is a job that fits those skills. But as soon as I saw the job advert, I was like, oh, well, that's my job. Like, that's
I'll be having that job.
Like, yeah, that I don't like that's great. Like, this is too perfect to be true. And that was 7 years ago.
Gosh.
So as CACHE Alumni has grown from having 0 members and being a small WordPress website, it is now a community of 26,500 members who all get involved in events and research projects and getting together to discuss their problems, and there's groups as well as like online careers advice, which is obviously where this minor aspect of CACHE Alumni comes in. It's been really cool. So I've sort of got to make it up a bit from there.
Was there anybody who sort of helped you in your career, Dawn? As you've helped so many people as a careers advisor, was there anyone that's helped you?
Loads of people. I think that there's people that have helped me just by being excellent role models or by sharing bits of themselves that have sort of made me reflect. So the powerful director woman in my first job who, wore really brightly coloured tights and sort of was very much herself, even in those sort of very formal boardroom situations, who explained that actually that's one of the reasons that she's successful, because nobody ever forgets that she's the one who said the thing, because she's very much herself. Or the person who explained that it didn't matter that I was scared about taking on this weird new thing, because it would have worked, because I wanted it to, and I would make it work, and sort of gave us that kick to stop being as dismissive of myself and the things that I might be able to do, because maybe I felt a little bit, I don't know, like work class, and I was dismissed a little bit in previous roles where I was able to take that little pep talk and go, oh, actually, like maybe this is for me, and move on to things that way. So there's loads of people who've helped, and there are lots of people who've helped by not helping. So again, those people who've sort of not just shown us the way not to do things, but shown us the things I don't want.
Yeah.
So, I don't want to work somewhere where I have to try and be influential or to sort of pretend to be something that I'm not. And there are things that I want, about being able to be honest with the people that I work with about like who I am and what my struggles are and what they can help me with, as well as them sharing those things with me for me to be able to help them. And that stuff stops me feeling like an imposter, because I can feel comfortable enough to say, oh, I hate doing this, I'm really not very good at it, like, and should belong together. Whereas I think I've worked some places where that's not the done thing, and you're just supposed to sort of struggle along and pretend that everything's really easy all of the time. So I think the people who have been less than helpful have very much also helped in their own way.
Yep. They're called like our greatest adversaries, we should go back and shake them in the hand and say thank you for the life lessons, that they've given us, because it's about that authentic leadership, and I really look at your role at CACHE, Dawn, and you've led it authentically, and I think that's what's really inspiring, and I think that's also, in doing that, allows other people to self-identify, that they see themselves in what this is all about, and how the communities kind of come together. And you also touched upon a really poignant thing about class, and seeing that regardless of that start, we've all got a part to play, we've all got a calling, as it were, and this vocation, so it kind of leads me to think an awful lot about social mobility, and economic development, and what those things really mean to you. And something that I've really loved working along with CACHE and NCFE about, you fly that flag really strong, and help people to really find themselves in either education or the job that they have, and to take great pride in that.
Yeah.
So
I think I haven't always necessarily been able to do that. I think I would always have told you that
hindsight,
I
maybe.
did. Like, I've always been really proud to be common as muck, like, and to, like, that's
We
who
didn't
I
say
am.
that.
But it's not that long ago that I would talk different at work, and I would make sure I always dressed a certain way, or sat in a certain part of my house, or did things so I would look a bit more middle class or sound a bit more middle class, because I felt like people would maybe take us more seriously if I had more sensible hair or talked more like a but like, it didn't. It just made people feel like I was pretending or compensating for something, and it meant that if I got feedback, I felt a little bit like I was under attack, because I felt a little bit like I was pretending anyway, or like I didn't fit in and I was making up for something. Whereas since I started not thinking about that stuff so much and just being me, and like being dead counsellor at work, like I have been able, like, people have respected us a lot more, because I can then concentrate on what I'm doing and the actual things, the work things that I should be talking about, and communicating them well so they make sense, rather than just so I sound like I know what I'm talking about. And they're two very different things.
Yeah.
And I like to concentrate less on the second one and more on the first one now.
That's really interesting, because I read somewhere that a class is the diversity no one wants to talk about.
Yep.
Yeah,
So
people call it like, just envious, or like as if it's lowering standards. Like, I commented a little while ago on LinkedIn, and I think about, like, at school, like, I think like a lot of maybe our teachers at school were working class professionals who maybe themselves felt like they were trying to like fit a certain mold to be seen as like teachers. So they would tell you to, like, oh, well, you'll not be able to do that when you get into work, or, oh, well, you'll have to make sure that you talk properly when you do such and such, and like dialect's not allowed, or any of those sorts of things. And if you talk about it, people say, well, I know, but if we just lower standards everywhere, then, and it's like, but what standards is it that you're lowering? Like, why is it worse to talk like me than it is to talk like you're from where the printing press was invented? That is, that it's the only reason that standard English is that that's the place that it started to get written down. Like, there's no reason that Geordie couldn't just as easily have been the English that got written down and became the one we all used. So I feel like maybe it's just about people, I don't know, thinking about things a little bit more with kindness. Like, in terms of, it's dead easy to make assumptions about people, but I think it's always hard to talk about the things that people can't see. Like, in the same way that I'm never going to understand the challenges that someone who maybe from a like very different socioeconomic background to me, who maybe has challenges around things like inheritance tax or capital gains or investments, or I'm probably never going to understand the stress of those things, or the difficulties that come with maintaining a family home that has been passed down through generations and needs more investment. It's probably not in my wheelhouse to start to try and understand them, because it's so wide of my experience. So I think that's always going to be the problem with working class understanding in a very typically middle class professional environment.
Yeah, in a different space. And it's like that masking then, I suppose, because we're becoming more accepting, or we're introducing like recruitment practices that remove bias, for people around different elements of a recruitment practice for, say, age or ethnicity or other elements of diversity. So we're trying to do more of that, remove those biases. But yes, I think that it's really interesting to think about that. Masking is a mental load for people. It is that acting in a certain way as a certain expectation, there's definitely a mental load there. And to hear you say it, to take away
imposter syndrome.
exactly,
Like, you feel like you're pretending because you are,
and then that's taking away from your ability to be doing the best job, because all the time you're thinking instead about that imposter. Am I good enough? Am I good enough? Instead of just being good enough, just be good enough.
So I don't expect necessarily that there's a dead easy answer to how we remove those biases, like in all of those different. So a totally different bias that you've mentioned when you were talking about those inherent biases was age bias.
Yeah.
And I've never thought about how this works in writing other than the obvious things like taking dates of birth off CVs. Nothing annoys us than going to do a CV workshop somewhere and someone saying, oh, well, my teacher says I've had to put my date of birth on my CV. And you go, no, don't. It's not a thing. Beyond those really obvious things about removing age, somebody like outed me without ever having seen a picture of us or videoed us for being nearly 40 by something I would never have considered, and that was that I'd sent them some copy for a newsletter for them to have a look at for us. They sent it back. They said, can we just take out all of the second spaces after full stops?
Okay.
Wow.
Because it's really unfriendly. And I was like, oh, I'd never considered it being unfriendly, because that's just how you write. Like, it's just how I was taught to write sentences in school, because you still hand wrote things when I was at school. So double spaces after a full stop were important for how things looked on the page. But now everybody types everything. People younger than, I don't know, 30 maybe, like, only use one space after a full stop. And that really simple, like, change of language rules, like, made it really obvious that I was nearly 40, like, because I used two full stops after two spaces after a full stop. So it's all those weird little things that are different for people that we just never think about, that make that whole, like, figuring out how we level the playing field or how we account for people's differences really difficult. So I think it's also really important for it to be able to separate someone's skills and their education and their professional experience and the way that they are able to do a job role from their personal background, from the way they might talk, or again, like, the way someone talks isn't just a class thing, it could be an age thing. You know, people talk differently in different generations, use different types of language. There might be more people, you know, being in workspaces versus remote work, and all of those things
changes everything.
I think we need to separate from people's ability to do the actual skills within a job and to be able to deliver what needs to be delivered, to be good at something, from what I loosely call the kind of person that they are. And actually that personality that goes alongside of it, however that personality has been forged.
Absolutely. Totally. You know, I think even when I look back at, again, teaching in very disparate parts of Scotland, some of them very affluent and some of them not so, it was quite incredible. That level playing field comes down to exactly what we were talking about, that authenticness, you know, the ability to do what we want to do, regardless of what other people or the constraints that we have around us. Now, that might be socioeconomic constraints, or it might be constraints about what is imposed upon us from, you know, family members, or what people perceive that you should be doing, and even from the education sector. You know, it wasn't so long ago that, you know, even apprenticeships were kind of like, oh, don't talk about school because we all want our pupils to go to university. So it's breaking down those kind of barriers and career pathways, and sharing the successes and the wins that we have when we are authentic, you know. And, you know, a large part of what we're trying to do at Skillsminer, and even when I was in teaching, was just about saying to people, you know, when you're happy, when you feel engaged, when you feel like you're being you, that's when you'll find your, you know, your flow state. You know, you'll feel really connected to what you do, And that naturally becomes the infectious thing of why other people want to work with you, or why people are attracted to your business or your personal brand, And I think the more that we have that in business or in teams, that's what's allowing us to prove that when we are like this, and we've all got a respective kind of, if you like, appeal, that then allows for those teams or businesses to be a whole lot more productive. They're more attractive to a wider audience too. And I think it's only about sharing that and sharing the small wins and the big wins along the way that we start to kind of break down those barriers of what people perceive as just being one career pathway, or you've got to be a certain type of person to get into this type of sector, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think that's an important thing when employers are advertising. I think it's one of those things, like taking the assumptions out of like the job advert. So like, I think if you look at, again, I've picked on childcare loads during this conversation, but if you look at the childcare sector, I think, again, people outside of the sector, or people like who maybe like HR people, agency people, look at the sector and they just assume that the people who are going to want to apply for those jobs are people from a certain socioeconomic background. But actually, if you look at the childcare sector, the early years education sector, in general, people aren't attracted to it because of the money. Like, that's not why people choose to do that job. They choose to do that job because it is a vocation. It's something that they really care about. If it wasn't, I promise they would go and get a job in like a supermarket, because it would be so much less work. And that's not to do down people who work in supermarkets. It's a really hard job. But in terms of like the stuff you've got to carry around with you, the stuff you've got to take home, the emotional side of it, all of the stuff that happens day to day. So that's taking the assumption of like who will want to do the job, and actually just thinking about what it is they need to be able to do, means that you're going to get a really broad set of people who are actually attracted to it for the right reasons, applying to do your job, who are capable of doing your job. And if you look at the sector, like, a lot of people come into childcare or early years education because they don't need to work. Maybe they're coming into the sector because actually they just really care about it. So it's not about making a wage or doing, like that sort of stuff. And then some jobs in early years education or childcare are actually really well paid. I think we did a session with a nanny not too long ago, Nanny Sharks, and she said some of the sort of just standard salaries for nannies, and like 40,000, 50,000, 150,000 pounds a year, are obviously salaries that are there for a reason, because this job is a really highly skilled, really, really, intense job where you, again, are bringing your whole self to work all of the time. But again, making assumptions about the socioeconomic background of the people applying for work isn't going to help you to fill vacancies with the right people, the right skill set. I suppose just stop making assumptions about all sorts of things and just think more about what we need when we're asking for help with things.
So what's your hope for the future for the sector then, Dawn, as we look forward with our crystal balls? What do you really hope to see as the biggest change maybe in the next kind of 6 to 12 months as we move forward?
I would like to see there be a bit more mobility between those four sectors, a bit more, understanding of that shared skill set, of those shared sets of values, so that people can move between those sectors a little bit more freely and take those skill sets with them. I would like to see them held in much higher esteem and recognised for being the professional roles that they are, and the word vocational starting to mean actually means again. And I would like to see those people, I suppose, coming together to raise each other up and therefore themselves up professionally a little bit more in public, and starting to stop using the word just or only to describe what they do, and to take more of a me and all of my colleagues are incredible and we do all of these things approach to talking about what they do for work.
That's lovely. And it's a great place to end our conversation today. And if people want to learn more about joining or finding out more information, we'll link all your work and where to find you, Dawn, in our little notes. But thank you so much for your time today. It's been really fascinating, and I just really love the work that you do. So keep it up. Keep up all the good work. Thank you for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thanks for your time.
Yeah, no, it's
Thanks.
great. Okay, thank you. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Skillsminer podcast. You can watch more podcast episodes on our YouTube channel or subscribe on Spotify.